Okay, so we're going to try and go ahead and get started here. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming. Great turnout once again, all of you. Some of you, I'm sure, were here at the first town hall. I recognize some people from that meeting. So it's great that we have all of you here to give a progress report and an update, and actually to try and present some sort of trial balloons, test balloons for some items that might be a component of the strategic plan going forward. So as Rick will describe, I think we've had a lot of meetings with individual committees. We had a retreat back in December. This is all since the last town hall meeting. Been reaching out to various groups across campus to try and get feedback and brainstorm and come up with some ideas. We thought that there were two jobs that we would want to accomplish today. One is for the three pillar areas: transformative teaching and learning, transformative research, creativity and innovation, transformative campus experience. We wanted to present to you some of the ideas that seem to be emerging as themes in these different areas. And secondly, to talk about what we're describing as horizontal connectors for this strategic plan. Some of the areas, some of the issues that touch on all of the three pillar areas and have an impact on how well we will be able to carry out activity in any of these areas. And those, the two that we've identified and are going to discuss today, are diversity and global footprint internationalization. I forget the term that we've used in this context. So for those of you, this is being hopefully successfully webcast, and for those of you who are viewing it via the webcast, if you have questions that you would like to pose, you're welcome to send these to strategic-plan@andrew.cmu.edu. Those will show up on Rick's computer, and he'll be able to convey those to the members of the various committees who can then respond to them. So with that, let me turn it over to Rick, who will then lead us down the way here. So thanks, Rick.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. I'm Rick Seiger. I am, I guess, not so new anymore, leading strategic initiatives work here at the university. And it's really great to see such a terrific turnout once again for our second campus-wide town hall. I wanted to take a second to just kind of walk through process here to date and some additional dates coming up. As you know, we rolled out the strategic planning effort in October. We had our first open public town meeting in November. Subsequently, there's been an enormous amount of focused work at the committee level happening among all three focus areas, and certainly behind the scenes as we work to facilitate the plan. Today is our second open public town hall meeting, and then in February we're really going to kick into high gear in terms of public outreach. We're doing three focus area specific town halls. The dates are on your agenda, and we'll certainly be announcing those and sending them out toward the end of this meeting. We're also going to be doing a faculty town hall that Scott and the Faculty Senate are hosting on February 3rd, 4:30 to 6 in the CUC, and a staff council town hall that same day, February 3rd, 12 to 1, hosted by staff council. So a lot of outreach happening. I think in March you can look for another one of these broad campus-wide engagements. And then as we move into summer, we'll be kind of doing a final round of outreach and then on to the fun stuff like layout and final editing. I want to urge people, both on the webcast and here, whether you have a chance to get a word in today or not, to feel free to send comments on our website, cmu.edu/strategic-plan. There's an email you can send it to as well. A couple of housekeeping items. The agenda today will focus, we're going to try to fit a lot into 90 minutes. So we're going to try to do 15 minutes on each focus area, and then 15 minutes on diversity, 15 minutes on international strategy. I'm going to try to keep the time. I know that discussion will get started here. Feel free to keep the conversation going post. A lot of us will be hanging around. We're happy to chat, or again, kind of via that email channel. And I would again urge folks on the webcast to send those emails in, and we'll try to get a question or two from around the globe today. Finally, there's a sign-in sheet or a number of sign-in sheets floating around. If you wouldn't mind signing in on a clipboard, that'd be terrific. Thanks very much, and why don't we kick this off, and with that, let's move to Focus Area 1, Transformative Teaching and Learning.
Great, thank you. Nathan and I have been leading this area, and we have come up with, and the people commenting from your areas, from the committees, et cetera, many possible ideas. And the list representing here does not by any means intend to be exclusive or exhaustive. And they're not, right, the only ideas, so I can say that in a million different ways. But we wanted to just present them as sort of a way to fuel the discussion and to basically give you some sense of the ideas that seem to be catching some traction, and give you actually two of them in a way that we don't have a lot of ideas in detail on, and invite you to comment on how we might implement them in interesting ways. So one idea that I'll talk about in a second is creating meaningful interdisciplinary experiences for students. Another is making CMU a lifelong education as opposed to a 4-year education. An idea that's been around for a long time but I think we're really taking seriously this time is we have an incredible amount of expertise and leadership in learning science and technology-enhanced learning. We don't do very much of actually applying it to the CMU education in any systematic, bold, big fashion. So there's a lot of energy, I think, around doing so. The idea of flipping the classroom has become very popular, and it's become quite clear that it works. The idea of flipping the institution is a little generalization of that involves things like getting students involved early on in some research, problem-oriented, community-engaged activity, right? And then having the classes that they participate in, right, become much more case study-based, engagement-based, as opposed to just, we're going to lecture at you in the usual way. So doing this on the whole institutional level is an interesting and fun, bold challenge to consider. There's a lot of energy, I think, for making sure that students are able to have some very interesting and meaningful experience outside of the usual classroom. And that can range from study abroad to a Washington semester program to some activity that involves something in the community, either a service learning program or a client-based project course that involves people in the community, all different sorts of ways that we can make sure students go through the 4 years and don't just experience the education in the classroom. And finally, even though that we're a very data-driven university, I think as dean I've experienced, and many others will say the same, that when it really comes down to looking at the educational experience that we offer, right, we don't collect systematic data on outcomes either at the course level or at the program level or at the school level. And it would be, I think, a very bold and important thing to consider, right, of creating, right, the infrastructure necessary to make all our education more data-driven, so we could actually understand in more detail what's going on and iterate in response to data, not just anecdotes. So let me just say a few words about the meaningful interdisciplinary experiences. Several ideas have come up with this, and one is what we're calling themed longitudinal experiences, right? So we could imagine giving students some very early exposure to the interdisciplinary analysis of a topic. So I should back up and say, instead of doing a curricular approach to interdisciplinary education, there's been a lot of people who have expressed excitement about taking topics, right, and then gathering the disciplines around a topic and showing students how powerful the approach is, right, when you engage it from a different set of disciplines at the same time. So doing that early, and then having the students engage in interdisciplinary research or something exploratory later in the educational process, perhaps even on the same topic. And examples of topics we can engage that, right, we have a lot of expertise and interest in, and sustainable energy. The Scott Institute is making that one of their 5 strategic threads. Immigration, privacy, cybersecurity, you name it, there's a whole lot of other options possible. And I think another idea that's sort of come up as attractive in many ways is really creating an educational experience in which the creative disciplines, right, entertainment technology, writing, drama, art, etc., get merged in a significant way, right, with the traditionally serious and dry academic disciplines, right? And I'm thinking of ethics, politics, etc., right? And by actually doing that, right, harness, right, the incredible creativity we have on the one side of campus with the disciplinary power on the other. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Nathan's going to present this idea about the degree with long tails, and then we're going to open the floor to you to tell us we're crazy.
So the name I've come up with for this is the degree with long tails, and here's the concept. A traditional undergraduate degree at an American university is 4 years. And so you essentially go from almost no interaction with the university to a maximal level of interaction to almost no interaction. So it's a step function that lasts 4 years. Now, the possibility for, especially through the use of technology of various kinds, of extending that or changing that description of the typical interaction between a student and the university is the idea here. So clearly on the one end, the post 4-year time period, engaging with alumni in a number of different ways so that they have access to the educational opportunities that are provided by Carnegie Mellon for a very long time, perhaps forever afterwards. Not in the sense of being able to get any degree they want for years thereafter, but rather having access to specific educational programs that could be provided on campus or online for years thereafter. So imagine now Google is going to hire one of our computer science majors, and in addition to the knowledge they have right now, they also have access to this subscription to a CMU degree for decades thereafter. That's sort of one aspect of the approach. The other aspect, the other tail, if you will, of the distribution, is one on the pre-engagement with Carnegie Mellon side. Creating, again, potentially through technology as one means, a set of activities, of courses, if you will, that allows students from 14 to 18 to begin to engage with real Carnegie Mellon curriculum so that they can get an understanding of what Carnegie Mellon is like, so that we can get an understanding of what they're like, so that it provides an educational opportunity for them and provides also an assessment opportunity as well. So these tails, adding these tails to the 4-year experience raise lots of interesting possibilities, also lots of questions about how this would be implemented, how this would work, but I hope I've conveyed the basic idea. So with that, we can open it to questions.
Questions, comments?
When you see my face, then you probably know what I'm going to talk about if I have a green light.
Oh, you don't need the light.
Okay. I don't want to use the word sustainability because if people ask me how is your marriage going, I don't want it sustainable. So I want to have us say we need to be regenerative. And this is the most important issue that will be with us for the next 10, 20 years, okay? So my proposal is, and I'm really grateful to your outline and what you briefly discussed, is how our experience on this campus, in terms of our existing buildings and our new buildings to go into construction, relate to these issues so that we can actually experience what David Henry Thoreau already said. It's not what you look at, it's what you see, what you experience. So that when you talk and reach out to these students who come here, that they can see and experience, smell and taste and touch through their built environment, how that relates to their future education in all these disciplines. It's computer science, it's electrocomputer engineering, it's civil environmental engineering, it's architecture, it's the arts, it's all of this. And Carnegie Mellon's campus consumes per person much more energy than Tsinghua University or Tongji University or many universities in France and so on. So I don't want to overdo it, but that's the point. If we, in our strategic plan, say Carnegie Mellon will be the place the world will come to see the future, to see it, smell it, taste it, and so on, and make sure that the students relate their very many disciplines to each other to make this possibility of regenerative
Thank you.
construction.
Looking around, in terms of our educational situation today, things are pretty crowded. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts about these particular ideas and how it would help us grow better, or what your specific vision is for how big we would get, how broad, how far-reaching, and how it would sort of address some of our stresses today going forward.
Sure, I'll take a shot. So certainly, all of these elements, whether it's the teaching, learning, research, or the CMU experience, are going to depend on the physical infrastructure in which we're inhabiting, and the quality of that infrastructure, both in terms of the human lived experience and also quality with respect to sustainability and a whole variety of different metrics. I mean, one of the horizontal areas that we were not going to talk about today is the notion of the infrastructure that's required for these activities. Certainly in the context of teaching and learning, we've been thinking about classroom infrastructure as one, also thinking about the if you will, the classroom of the future, which may not be a classroom at all, especially with the modernization of approaches, the notion that we will need fewer lecture halls and fewer classrooms of that sort, and more spaces for collaborative, sort of perhaps more innovative interactions. I don't know if Thanasis is here, but you know, Ideate being an example of a kind of space which might be a component that we need to build more of, those kinds of classrooms, those kinds of rooms. But thinking about how it is that the physical structure of campus needs to change and adapt, whether it's for the teaching, the research, or for the campus experience, is something that I think is very important. We haven't engaged deeply in that yet, but certainly if you have thoughts, I would be very curious to hear them. So,
I find myself a little drawn to maybe a clearer definition for point number 6 here on the board. I had watched last year's town hall. Thank you for putting that online. It was very helpful to give me some context. But having spent 2.5 years myself in higher administration in Cairo, and then working through various, undergrad and graduate degrees, I find it interesting to now have an experience on both sides of the coin, as a student and as an administrator. And I wonder if you see point 6 addressing any of the administrative waste and how that impacts the student's experience to actually do more learning, do more community engagement when they're spending less time running around filling out paperwork.
Well, I think the primary idea is that we as professors and teachers are oftentimes flying blind. We don't really know what the students are getting. And even if we have a pretty good idea of what they're getting in a course, right, we have very little idea of what they're getting in a program, right, or over the course of 3 years, how they're advancing in critical thinking or how they're advancing in writing in general, right? So I think that all the ways we can find to cleverly, right, and uninvasively, right, measure, take stock, get ourselves information that's actually useful about what people are actually learning and what they're doing, so we can begin to analyze, the connection between what they do and what they learn, right, will help us immensely in trying to iterate and adjust so that we're not just doing the old, I have a subject, I'm going to go lecture at you, give you some innovative exams, and then at the end of the day say you've learned it or not. So I think the idea is really to take what's happened in certain classrooms that's been very effective, right, when it measures and collects and iterates, right, through that measurement, and ramp it up to programs in the whole university so that we as educators and administrators aren't always flying blind, right? It would be really helpful, I think. Okay.
And certainly that could result in some things being added and other things being eliminated to make the experiences much more meaningful.
I should say, we don't know how to do it yet. and that's not been asked of us yet, right? So we have time for one more question. Yeah.
I was wondering if the idea of a university CMU-wide core had been discussed.
No, we haven't discussed that.
I mean, we've discussed... Yeah. We haven't discussed that very directly. I would say we've discussed some of the things that we think of as being distinctive elements of the product of a CMU education, and then tried to look back at what kinds of experiences generate those outcomes. But we have not, in any serious way, tried to encapsulate that and to say, here's a core set of courses that, or a core set of courses or a core set of experiences. The committee has not gone in that direction thus far. But if people have suggestions about that, once again, we'd be happy to hear.
Okay, before we turn it over to the next group, let me just ask you to please go onto the website. The slides will be available, so these 6 points will be visible, and we have slides backing them up with a little more detail. Getting your feedback on whether these are good, bad, how they could be implemented, what ideas would help them or hurt them would be very helpful to us as a committee going forward. So I urge you, even if you can't have a comment registered today, please go online and tell us what you think.
Thanks.
I'm Jim Garrett, and I'm with my colleague Farnham Jahanian. We're co-leading this second pillar on transformative research, creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I would like to, at the beginning here, make a plea for all three of the pillars and the other topics that are going to be discussed to do the same thing. Please go out to the website, look at this material. If you're interested in commenting on one of these or two of these, please pick whatever ones that you want to comment on and give us your feedback. I would now like to, in fact, invite co-chairs of our two subcommittees. We have had Gary Fetter and Manuela Velosa co-leading the transformative research and creativity discussions, and we've had Peter Boatwright and Cindy Lamaro co-leading the innovation entrepreneurship activities. They've met with a lot of people outside of their committees, and then their committees themselves have come together many times over the past couple of months, and now have a couple of ideas they want to float. So I'm going to ask them to come up and lead this part of the discussion. There's Gary back there and Peter. So what I'll do is I'll put this up, and then Peter, you can start while Gary's
So where we are in the process, we have listened a lot, and we still are listening. So echoing what others have said, please continue to feed in information and ideas. Thinking of high level and moving down to more how would we do that, or what actually, action items is what we're moving towards. And you're going to see that transition as we go through these slides. So here are kind of the high-level goals, and you might even call these values if you want to use a different word, because Carnegie Mellon is already a great university. We're already achieved these to a great extent. And so you can look at these and say, well, what's the goal? We're there, but there's always room for continual improvement, and that's where we're gathering ideas, is how to continue to advance. These are the longer statement of the goals. So excellence in all that we do will be a quick summary. But see the span here is we're trying to have societal consequence. So we're trying to have broad impact. And then look at the spectrum that we have in the second bullet point is theory and practice, basic discoveries, translational innovations. There are various words for that span. Yes and yes is something that we embrace at Carnegie Mellon. And then the academic destination for across the spectrum of faculty and staff and students who are looking to learn about and implement innovation and entrepreneurship at all the levels of that practice. And then Carnegie Mellon providing support. So here's an area where often faculty are trained in creating some of the ideas, but there might be some supplemental areas to make their lives easier so they can do what they do best, what they've been trained for, but then they can be augmented by somebody facilitating along with them, which would be this fourth goal, this fourth value that we have. So what you see here in the bold print is replicating what you saw on the previous slide. But here's in the sub-bullets here are, I'll call this a sampling of ideas of what does this mean? What do we actually do about some of these? And so this is where it would be very interesting to hear more of your ideas or feedback on these or reactions. So I'll just go through these. Are there certain ones you want to go through, Gary? I'm leaving you out so far. I'll turn it over to Gary for now.
Let me just make a clarifying statement. So so we listed 4 goals, as said, kind of a compass needle of what we want, what we aspire to be at Carnegie Mellon, and certainly we're looking for feedback on that. The 4 bullets here in bold are really drill down strategic recommendations that might come under any one of those goals. I mean, we're not detailing that. In fact, some of these recommendations are probably cross-cutting. We actually have come up with a long list, but we decided on these 4 to share with you today to kind of prime the pump. The first has to do with creating mechanisms for meaningful bottom-up collaboration. So looking for example, ideas of open area seed funding opportunities, support for structured brainstorming, flexible space issues. This is all about driving our kind of bottom-up culture in a proactive way and enabling people further. The second strategic recommendation, these are all straw man, of course, so is to identify, implement new flexible ways to work with the private sector. So what we mean by that is, can we think out of the box of how do we work with industry in this research, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship enterprise that we have, and maybe working with nonprofits, other external entities other than, of course, the federal government. This could include flexible space policy and policies, different types of industry engagement centers other than the standard kind of contract type of approach. And how do we leverage our alums in creative ways. The third recommendation has to do with with networking. How do we connect with non-traditional expertise on campus? This includes the linkages between innovation, entrepreneurship, and research creativity, especially this we call reverse linkage of how do we learn from the innovation enterprise efforts going on, and how might that help inform and motivate the type of research that we're doing, so we can close that loop. Some of this may have to do with embedding more professors of the practice, more entrepreneurs in residence, more distinguished service professors on campus, and what maybe we will probably think deeper about what that might mean. The fourth and last recommendation on this list has to do with the support infrastructure to compete, and in this case we're thinking focus on how do we provide support for large center level activities. This gets to working on support for long-term thinking, long-term efforts, so that we're competitive to win very large centers. And also implied in this is creating even greater impact on society. So this has to do with providing incentives for the leadership of these type of activities to step forward. It's a lot of work. Providing more of a customer-oriented service organization that helps with these types of grants, maybe talking about grant writers and other early seeding and brainstorming to kind of seed these things 5 years in advance or 3 years in advance so they can mature. So with that, we can open the floor for discussion.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to. My suggestion is that we combine the idea of transformative teaching and learning with this idea of transformative research. And the idea is that there is an emerging discipline in the education sciences, and we've had some of that at Carnegie Mellon. We've actually had a training grant for almost 10 years now that includes students from HCII, psychology, philosophy, statistics, physics, Kepler, and they're all doing research on education, on learning. On the other hand, we have the proceed assignment of startup grants, and I view those as basically well-intentioned amateur efforts. And I don't say that to disparage the people who are doing a lot of them, but we have people in physics trying to do physics education without really delving into the literature and the education sciences. So I think it's very important to make sure that the innovative research that gets done isn't just off the cuff, but in fact is based on a very powerful and emerging discipline for which there is external funding. Perhaps really making sure that the Eberly Center continues to expand and grow, and then becomes a center that coordinates research around the campus. And one way to make this really robust would be to have the disciplines be willing to grant PhDs in teaching their subject within their departments. You have that here and there around campus. We just had a student graduate from computer science who was in our training grant, who has a PhD in computer science from Carnegie Mellon, where her job is computer science research and research on education. In fact, she's now the head of all of the computer science education in the city of New York. We have had other students in the physics department who have been in our program, and the physics department was willing to give a PhD to someone who was not going to do physics, but was going to do research on teaching physics. And I think we could really become a national leader in that sort of model, in which disciplinary departments are willing to grant PhDs to people in their area, teachers in that area.
So that's a handful. So I think hopefully we caught that. One point would be to make sure we speak in the microphone so that it's on the webcast, so people can hear it, and maybe we can also make sure we can digest this later.
I got that.
Awesome. Okay. But yeah, I think that's, I think one of the ways to think of this too, and this was brought up in the retreat, is this connection of the education with research, and you've brought up some very good points. Yes, in the front.
For me?
Yeah.
So one of the things that strikes me for both of these is that you talked about interdisciplinary and collaboration across departments and across colleges, but we're still admitting students only within colleges. We don't have a way for students to be admitted interdisciplinary, narrowly, I don't know. So why are we continuing to do that? If we're going this direction, maybe we should think about our students coming in that way. And there's a little bit of a sense in Dietrich that we lose students when they are forced to choose, when they're comparing us to other institutions that have maybe an arts and sciences kind of system that we don't have. So maybe that's something to think about. If this is our goal, is our admissions process, our pipeline, actually doing the same thing?
That's good. Thank you. And then
behind, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I have just some questions about, I guess I feel a little uncomfortable with the emphasis so much on the private sector and industry and entrepreneurship. Because one thinks of a university, of course, as also having a critical point of view and protecting itself, I mean, in the worst case, against conflict of interest. But in the best, thinking very broadly of also criticizing, I don't mean in a destructive way, but I mean in an overarching way, what might be more the practical interests, and I mean self-interest, of groups within society. And I don't quite see that incorporated here. I mean, maybe just assuming that that's there, and that we have to bend the stick in the other direction, which I don't think of CMU really needing to bend that stick in that much of that direction. Anyway, so I'm just curious about how you see research as a critical process engaging practically with the society, but not only in practitioners who may have interests.
I think, I certainly don't know if we want to engage in a dialogue on that right now, and that I think that certainly has to exist. But if you look at the strategic recommendations we've listed is 4 of many that go under the goal ideas. So I think it might, in your case where you're thinking about the meta issue of what we aspire to be as a university, you might want to look at the goal ideas and think about, do those mirror the type of aspirations, behavior, characteristics that we want to have at the university? And I would suggest that certainly the first goal is our attempt at expressing, I think, what you're discussing. And so maybe if we frame it in that way and you read that first goal, does that express what you're talking about, or how do we tune it, or what's missing from that you're trying to explain?
Well, I guess I'm not, I mean, I see that is a very general way. It kind of goes from the very general to the quite specific in terms of some ways to perhaps implement some of these ideas. And I suppose I would like some kind of language that suggests, I don't mean critical in the sense of an attack, but in the sense of independence and an overarching. And that's what I think of what universities do that is different than really any other institution in our society. That is really what we do that's special. And I don't mean CMU in particular. I think all universities, have to, but I would, and maybe that's just accepted, and we don't, it's like a, given. But it does make me a little uncomfortable to go to something very general about excellence in research, of course, to, more private sector, bringing in practical professors and, these kinds of things. But it's true, I would have to think about that, how linguistic, language-wise, how to bring something like that in.
Okay, we have time for one more.
Let's see, does this work? Yeah, oh, great. Okay, I first would like to very much thank the leaders of the three thrusts and their committees for all the great work and the very thoughtful ideas and goals that come out here. So this is really, really great to see. I would like to get back. I had emailed Jim and Farnham a set of questions for consideration in their subcommittees. And I would like to get back to one of the issues that is sort of very dear to my heart, and it's about the role of science in a research university. And for a very long time, excellence in science was sort of was always leading to fundamental discoveries about nature, and this sort of constituted a driving force that moved a great university forward. And resulted in prestigious awards, Nobel Prizes, and so on, which then of course strongly influenced the reputation of the university. So my question was, will excellence in science research still play a role in the decades to come, and where is CMU positioning itself?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think yes. Very strongly. I think that's all we need to say on that.
I double that. It falls under our second goal, I think, and certainly an area where in all of these areas, email us your ideas about recommendations. This is, as you said, very general, but it's kind of a compass needle on then driving the recommendations. So under these areas, if you have specific recommendations of how we excel in science, great, let's hear them. If you see something that we should have as a goal that's not up here, let us know that too. Thank you.
Right. And there have been members of the committee itself that have been promoting that same goal.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ramaya Krishnan. I'm the Dean of the Heinz College, and I co-lead pillar number 3 with Michael Murphy. I'd like to, since the last town hall meeting, we have expanded the scope of what it is we're doing in pillar number 3. I'd like the co-chairs of the working groups that we have within this to be recognized. I saw, so if Gina and Amy could stand up. They're leading the working group focused on students. Scott Sandage and Todd Tribitian are leading the group on faculty issues. Matt D'Amelio and Denise Fazio are leading the working group on staff, and Pamela Eager and Becca Allison are leading the effort on alumni and parents. Today's focus is going to be very much about students, and I'd like to, as all my other colleagues did, encourage all of you to provide input and feedback both via email and via the web. There are also going to be other opportunities for each of these different working groups to engage and interact with the rest of the campus community, which will be announced later today. And in today's discussion, we're going to be talking in particular in the focus on students. These 4 areas have been identified: intellectual, artistic, professional development, personal development, and communal, organizational, and societal aspects. And I want to turn this over now to Gina to lead this discussion.
Thank you very much, Krishna. And I'll ask my colleague Amy Burkert to join me, and I'm going to head back in one of the slides. I'm Gina Castellino, Dean of Student Affairs. It's really wonderful to be here and have an opportunity. We hope to engage in a discussion, maybe less Q&A, because we're only posing one idea for this group to contemplate, and that was quite intentional. So we started our work really focusing at first on the student experience. We have since expanded in, I think, thoughtful and important ways in thinking about how these core outcomes domains, so the idea of intellectual and artistic development, personal development, professional development, and I'll call the fourth category citizenship development. We have a lot of concepts up there about what that means to us, that those are really key drivers in the experiences for our alumni, for our faculty, and certainly for our staff, for us to be successful as a community, but also in the ways that we engage and interact with our students. So we will focus, I think, our discussion probably more on the students in today's question, but there's great resonance with the issue that we'll talk about here, the idea that we'll talk about here, that applies to the whole of the Carnegie Mellon community, and we're very interested in your thoughts about that. So if you think about the first three outcomes areas as the working groups have been established, which there are 6 of, I believe. We have one for faculty, one for staff, one for alumni and parents, as Krishnan did his introductions for us. And then we have split up the student working groups into 3 by population of undergraduate, master's, and doctoral. We've thought about the first 3 domains as being internally focused, the development of the self. And then thought about, what about those contributions? How do we take the development of the self and think about the ways that we apply that development to broader communities, contributions to society, organizations, etc. So we've spent quite a lot of time in these sub-working groups thinking about what these constructs mean to us, how they interrelate, and ultimately considering what are the specific sub-bulleted outcomes of the outcomes. I don't think we have our nomenclature exactly right yet, but if we think of these as domains, what are the outcomes underneath each? So we're in the process of developing those with each of our working groups, and ultimately want to then parlay that into the big ideas. It's impossible in a strategic planning exercise to not get to the big ideas right away, but we want to make sure that there is a foundation from which we're drawing. And your ideas would be very helpful to us as we move into the big ideas discussion, which will be happening at town hall meetings and other discussions that, as Krishnan referenced, will be announced here today for specific populations. So as I said, we want to spend our time with you. I'm going to turn this over to Amy to get into a question that we hope to really be a discussion, less question answer, and more of a robust discussion. So we've really carved out in our section for Thrust 3 quite a lot of time, or Focus Area 3, quite a lot of time to hear your thoughts about this question.
So the question really draws on a lot of the discussions that have been ongoing for a number of years, that Gina and I led a town hall meeting a couple of years ago related to our campus culture. And as the steering committee has been having our conversations, we realize that while most of that particular discussion was focused on the students, that this hard-driving rigor and high levels of excellence and the desire to continue to evolve and improve actually does impact not only our student populations, but our faculty and our staff populations. So one of the questions our group developed, which really spans all of the areas, is that this enduring value and guiding principle, that commitment to hard work, this does manifest in the rigor of our academic programs, the commitment and dedication of our faculty and staff, and the effort that our students put into their metacurricular learning experiences. Again, we still, though, highlighted the need for a greater focus on the quality of life. And in fact, President Suresh, in his inaugural year, really made that as one of the driving action items that he would like to advance. And I think we are getting resonance with the Healthy Campus Initiative and other activities. But I guess our question still remains, how do we maintain that excellence and rigor while also ensuring a commitment to wellness for all of our community members? So we'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I will say we've tried some activities in the last couple of years, both at the academic area and more in the environment and more the metacurricular area. And there are some opportunities that have even been proposed as part of this process. For example, in the academic realm, we have a very liberal overload and very late withdrawal policy. And some people feel that that could be contributing to the level of stress or overload and anxiety that many among our population feel. And the faculty then are also impacted by that when students are reaching out to them in times of distress. So that's one area or example, but we're very interested to hear your thoughts.
And if I can ask if you share some thoughts with each other, if you can introduce yourself, that would be terrific. Yes, Jim.
I'm Jim Morris. I think what all that said in a very subtle way is maybe people should work less hard.
What do you all think?
And 17 years ago when Jerry Cohen came here, he said he wanted to make Carnegie Mellon more of a place like Yale and less like Johns Hopkins, which Johns Hopkins apparently is a place where people were very proud to have gone there but never wanted to see the place again. And Jerry said, I'd like to move CMU in that direction. And whereas I think Jerry has done some incredible things for us, I actually haven't seen that needle move at all. And I was, by the way, I was a student here in the 60s, and I think it must have been a more relaxed place here.
A very active and involved student.
And I think it was probably in the 30s that all of these things like Spring Carnival got invented, and those people must have had a lot of spare time.
We hear sometimes from faculty they think our students must now with the extraordinary things they do with Booth and Buggy. Jim, do you have any hypotheses about, even with the declaration of a visionary president, you haven't seen that needle move. Do you have any hypotheses about why that might be? What is it about our DNA, as part of what I'm hearing, that makes this a tough needle to move?
DNA changes at evolutionary speed.
Right.
So I actually sent an email in with a suggestion.
We got it. Thank you.
I once heard a story, I don't know if it's true, that at Harvard they only allow students to take 4 courses, no more. And if a student says, I'm so smart that this doesn't challenge me, they say, well, go and be the editor of the Harvard Crimson, or spend 90% of your time at the Hasty Puddings Club. That's what they do there. Now, I wouldn't forever imagine that we would have a culture like Harvard's, but one thing that would fit with CMU's culture would be to charge people more money for overloads. I sort of cringe at computer science graduations when they say, here's a person who had a 4 factor and graduated in 3 years. And that's the kind of place we are. It's almost a transactional thing. Get in, get out, learn hundreds of thousands of units of things. But that's deep in our culture.
Jim, I suspect there are people who have thoughts about your about what you've proposed. Andrew, is your hand almost up? You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Andrew Schwartz. Jim, I do agree with your point. I want to pivot to something I've heard a little bit, but I don't think has been enforced enough, which is the balance of a stressful culture with a support system. I have thrived on the mentors that I have had here, and I've seen people suffer without the same system. Perfect example, program out of Heinz sent 5 people around the world this summer to different places to do volunteer work. And I watched my project succeed because I was able to call people back at the university who weren't involved in the program for help, and I watched other people have to have people sent to them because they just really didn't know who else to call. We do great things here, but a lot of students lack the institutional understanding. They're not told that they're supposed to go seek out these mentors. And the mentors aren't told that they're supposed to go seek out these students, and there's a reason why I haven't even left campus yet, and I've already been asked how I'm going to give back to CMU as an alumnus, because I've made those connections. So there are people that spend 90% of their time doing things that aren't in classes, and they still overload. So I think you get a lot of that, but it's the people, and it's about enhancing those relationships that at 3 o'clock in the morning will be helping each other.
Thank you, Andrew. Carolyn?
Carolyn Acker. I agree with Jim wholeheartedly. I think one of the things to challenge is this sort of implicit notion that almost came out, Amy, in some of how you express things, that there's somehow some conflict between really working as hard as we want people to work and quality of life. Whereas I think what we're looking for is that level of hard work that is compatible with quality of life, that does not have a lot of wasted energy. And on the issue of courses, I think the late add and late drop is terrible. In courses like in history, where students do a lot of writing, you invest an enormous amount of time in a student over the course of the semester, and when they drop out 2 weeks before the end of the semester, that hurts. When students come in late, they miss some of the early synergy of the course. And so I think those are areas worth looking at. I went to Swarthmore College, also in the 60s, a more relaxed time. In the honors program at Swarthmore, you take 2 seminars a semester, and you immerse yourself in that material. And that's another model.
Thanks, Carolyn. Julia?
Hi, so I think I see a lot of value in the way our program is now, and that we allow students to take a lot of classes, because for some people, that is the work that they want to put their heart into. But I also find that there's not a lot of value in the work, in the other types of work that people are passionate about and want to put their heart into. And that sometimes students who really would rather put 90% of the time in something else it's not necessarily seen as valuable. And so there's a lot of pressure to take a lot of classes, and that your grades and all that stuff play a lot into your career, which they do, but developing those other passions and side projects and whatever it is, that other type of work, which is definitely how I feel. I put in my heart into work a lot outside of academics, is not necessarily seen as valuable.
So that's Julia Eddy, and we're really grateful for that work, absolutely. So I think we have one more. I'm going to let Amy pick.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'm Corey Sattler, a graduate student at Hines College. I'd like to maybe combine Jim's point and Short's. Andrew, Jim and Mr. Shorts. Schwartz, yeah. Okay, sorry. In that, on one hand, I think CMU might want to do an assessment on how they come off as an elitist institution, because I think that prevents you from engaging the community in some ways. People don't like being talked down to. They don't like feeling like an outsider. Because we're an institution that does attract a lot of the most intelligent people in the world, sometimes it's hard to make those community connections with people who don't fall within that category. And then as far as the student experience goes, I know that it's been a struggle to find the support to want to engage with the community, because the course load is so much. There's only so much time that we can do as students to make these connections, and with the the in and out nature of, like, we're here for 2 to 3 years and then we're gone. There's really no one to supervise the transition of the students who are leaving, but so maybe you get a group of students that make a really great, impactful connection, and then they'll graduate and nothing gets followed up, and that's all gone, and you have to start over. And finding a way to maybe streamline that continuity to preserve those when you do get a pack of students that do finally reach out, and then maybe also incubating a culture with the faculty and staff to, maybe incorporate a lot of the other ideas to encourage them to reach out to the community when they're doing research, and include other, there's so many colleges and universities in this area already, so. Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. So that idea of the long tails is one that's interesting from focus area 1 for us to think about. So I feel like we've scratched the surface. We knew that would happen, but we will have a town hall meeting February, I believe it's the 11th. that we can come back to this issue and many more that we would really like your input. Faculty, staff, students, alumni who are able to be with us. This has been really helpful. Thank you all so very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Lahosky, and whoops, I didn't do question 2 even. Okay, the next 2 segments are really new topics we haven't talked about that are seen as cross-cutting across these 3 pillars that we've just had discussion about. And they're very much related to each other as well. Diversity, which I, with Amy Burkert and Fred Gilman back in the room, you 2 should come up and facilitate. I'm going to go through some slides and then, but we have a larger group, Everett Tatamy and Brian Lewis and Holly Hoppensteel, and all the time we can get from Gina, which there's precious little. She has an overload problem also. All right, keep going here. That's saying diversity. Okay, this is a very timely topic, particularly with the presence of Freeman Hrabowski on campus on Monday. Gave a Simon lecture and Martin Luther King lecture, and was talking very much about success of groups that are often not well served by the academic institutions. And not only is he a visionary leader, but he's also incredibly successful, able to implement plans and achieve great success. Diversity is one of these topics that cuts across all 3 of the pillars. There may be some debate on this point, but it's in the student experience. We've talked about teaching and learning and the critical role that having a diverse group in the academic sense, how diversity plays a role there. And then in what we were just talking about, although it got onto wellness and work-life balance, the student experience in general and how we can help the education of the students to come and engage with a huge diverse community here. So both focus areas are pillars 1 through 3, 1 and 3, and then it's, I think, well understood the role that diversity plays in research process, creativity, and innovation, and entrepreneurship. That's a critical role of having diverse groups collaborating with each other. And so this is kind of summarized of a place we'd like to reach, that we have to position ourselves to be able to recruit and engage what I call world talent in the student body, in the staff, and in the faculty. And Carnegie Mellon has to be a draw for the best in the world as a place to come for education and for research. And we need to, on top of that, to not just assemble the talent, but we have to have an environment where every member of the community can excel and can benefit from the perspectives that everyone brings. So that's a beginning. Now, one thing about this session is that we haven't broached the topic of diversity yet, so I can't tell you what our preliminary thoughts are. That's a big part of engaging with the community at this point. We're going to do it today, and we invite all of you to engage in identifying issues where we're not able to excel, barriers we have to overcome, and also your good ideas. So constructive criticism and good ideas of how to make progress in this. So I'll just cite on the next slide some sort of obvious critical issues that we have, and I invite you also to add to this mix. So first of all, any reasonable environmental scan of the environment is that we have a very low representation of minority groups and women in the student body and staff and faculty, and we just simply have to do better. And having observed this over many years, we're not doing better. I think the environment may be better, but the actual demography of the groups we have here needs to be improved. And this engages the global aspect as well, that we have a wonderful international population on campus, but it's very much skewed. And so I'll leave that to Jimmy Shaw to talk about in the the next session on international strategies. Secondly, basically, if you look at the leadership of the institution at pretty much the unit level all the way up to the highest levels of the institution, you see a very non-diverse group. And we need to do something about development, leadership development, and offering opportunities in order to change that. It's not going to happen instantly, but unless we really begin to engage in this and really develop a strategy, it's never going to change. Well, not never, but no time soon. And then there are also unintended consequences of basic underrepresentation, particularly in the classroom, that can students in small groups can feel isolated, and it can add additional stress where not only can they just engage as a student, but somehow they're thought of as representing their own particular group, which is more than we ask of the majority. So I just wanted to raise some discussion questions, and if you have, please, if you have other points you want to raise, we'll kind of a nice discussion now, and then we can move forward with this afterward. So how are we going to develop strategies to ensure that we increase the educational benefits of diversity with all students having authentic interactions and exchanges with diverse others? So it's one thing to assemble a group, it's another thing to get the benefits of the engagements across, okay, to really get the benefit of the diverse group that we're assembling. How can we improve the representation and retention of women and minorities in the student body, the staff, faculty, and the leadership of the university? How can we gain success for all of these groups? What programs can we introduce or enhance, if there are currently programs that exist, to provide an environment where all members of our community can excel? And what should our goals be? Now, Subra Suresh wants this to not be a strategic plan that just goes up on the shelf then. He wants very clear goals. He wants them to be stretch goals, but also obtainable. So we have to think about what diversity goals, what should they be for 5 years, what should they be for 10 years, that we're actually going to really seriously work on and hopefully achieve. Okay? So with that, let me stop. And I have some more facilitators here, and the floor is open for questions, comments.
Very quickly, my point would be we should reach out beyond Carnegie Mellon University to work with our own community in Pittsburgh. We have all kinds of challenges, and if we had projects that would relate to the Hill District, that would relate to other things, we could make students that don't have the sensibility yet but aware of some of those issues, how they go beyond a university, and it would be a two-way street.
So some of that is happening, Volker?
Yes.
But do you see that as being broadened and institutionalized?
Yes. And you know, when you look at the recent NSF request for proposals, it's to reach out from research into education into different contexts, including community colleges and K through 12 and so on. So there are opportunities now that are emerging even in the national level.
Thank you. In the back.
This is more of Jay Aronson.
Yeah.
This is more of a question, not a sort of suggestion. But have you, in your research or your sort of preliminary studies, found institutions, whether they're at the university, higher education level, or at the corporate level, who have actually done significantly better than the vast majority of other institutions, which are probably pretty similar to where we are, trying really hard, saying a lot of good stuff, but not making much progress? And so, what have you learned?
Well, there was a pretty obvious example that was on display on Monday with Freeman Hrabowski and all that he's done at UMBC. So that's, I think, one very good example. As I say, he's not only has a great vision, and indeed he's talking about partnering with Carnegie Mellon, but what he's been able to achieve at that institution is quite amazing. So there's a very good role model right there.
But what's the secret? What's his secret?
Well, you should probably his talk is on the web, actually. He's famous for his 4 pillars of success, and they touch on many of the topics we have here: collaboration, a culture of collaboration, and the introductory courses. He's very focused on STEM. but for him, there are 4 pillars of success, and his institution has had great success.
Jen has a comment.
I'm sorry.
Jen Keating-Miller.
Jen, okay.
Hi, I'm Jen Keating-Miller. It seems like one of the things that might be really useful in this effort is to begin to disentangle the societal questions and historical precedents from the efforts that we're interested in making as an educational institution. And in that effort to actually develop a hierarchy of a couple of critical areas that we might be able to begin pilot level interventions on these questions and develop a track record of excellence in modest ways and build on that track record. I think Hrvatski offers an excellent example of that with Meyerhoff Scholars Program that started quite, it had extraordinary ambition, but I think the actual effort in building a community and focusing in the STEM disciplines was tremendous in that they were able to build slowly with phenomenal institutional investment on the financial side as well as the educational and intellectual development of their cohort. And that has served as a model for things like the TRIO programs throughout the country, McNair programs, and other educational endeavors that have been invested in by the U.S. government as well as matched by institutional investments. So I think as an institution, if we were to prioritize maybe 4 areas that we could begin to make interventions now, set goals for 2020, 2025, and then from there develop some type of track record, that might allow us to actually begin to move the needle ever so slightly forward in developing a robust educational pipeline that could actually make a big difference when we start looking at the survey of doctorates in 2025 or thereafter.
Good, thanks. Scott.
I want to just lob out a concrete suggestion that I think is innovative and worth discussing. There's a model that was invented at Carnegie Mellon in the last 40 or 50 years called emissions trading. It's also referred to as cap and trade. There are disciplines at Carnegie Mellon that are practiced by populations that are full of women and excellent scholars who happen to be of color or happen to be women. Those disciplines like history and English, for example, don't have any money. There are disciplines at Carnegie Mellon that have a pipeline problem with women and minorities and simply can't find highly qualified, excellent candidates who are willing to come here. They have lots of money. So if computer science can't find enough women, it can hire a poet, it can hire a historian. And I'm quite serious, because if this were paired with a pipeline initiative in which when electrical engineering hires an African American to teach literature, they also endow a scholarship to try and get more minorities into electrical engineering, we could both grow some of the historically smaller disciplines at Carnegie Mellon while also beginning to prime the pump for the other disciplines.
We're out of time now. Or one more.
Greg Billy. I noticed that the definition of diversity is fairly narrowly focused, and that may be intentional, but perhaps there's other things that would be included in the strategy, like diversity in perspective or experience. I'm thinking specifically maybe the veterans community is one that might be a diversity target.
Good, okay. Jimmy?
Good afternoon. I'm the new Vice Provost for International Programs and Strategy. Actually, I'm so new that this is my day 3 for full day. I have my foot on the ground of Carnegie Mellon. Okay. So, international strategy. Why do we have an international strategy? Aren't we all happy to have the bright sunshine, Pittsburgh sunshine, and with frozen snow on the ground? Now, the world is changing, we all know that. If you look at the companies, all major companies are multinational companies, we know that. Most of the most important issues or challenges facing the society are global. Okay? So to meet the societal needs, our faculty and students must be prepared to take the challenges, global challenges of the future. So my point is, it's probably having an international strategy is not a luxury. It's survival. We have to have it. Okay? It turns out that Carnegie Mellon has done extremely well. These are the footprints of Carnegie Mellon in the world. I'm highlighting several of these. These are campuses that we have all over the world, in Australia, in Qatar, in Rwanda, Portugal, and we have an institute in China. Okay. Part of the reason I'm showing this is, if you're tired of snow outside, go to Australia today, or Qatar, or Doha. But also, I want to make the point that these are the people who are doing international things: faculty, students, staff. Without that, there's no need for an international office. Without that, there's no need for an international strategy. Okay? So what should be our international strategy? I don't have any, as John mentioned, that we haven't talked about this yet. And I'm so new, I don't know what you're thinking. But I posed several questions, just as thought for food. How do we prepare our students for future challenges of the world? How do we maintain high-quality education on all CMU campuses, not just Pittsburgh campus, but all campuses? How do we identify international opportunities efficiently and act on them swiftly? Research, education, service, all these opportunities. How do we become a global hub of knowledge, culture, and technology that impact the life of the people in the world and address the world's most pressing problems? How do we position ourselves so that we will consistently be a top university in the world? These are the questions for us to think about, but let me raise one more question. Think about what will CMU be like 20 to 30 years from now. Nathan raised the possibility of CMU with a long tail, and I can give you an example. If you look at the industry nowadays, compare it to industry 30 years ago, if you asked me 30 years ago that there's a company called Foxconn that has a manufacturing campus in a city called Shenzhen with 250,000 employees on that campus, single campus, I would have told you that you're joking. You're right. This is the kind of thing that my son would say when I say something. The reason for that is I was there 30 years ago. 1985, I was in Shenzhen. It was almost a small fishing village. Now they have a campus, single campus, with 250,000 employees. So roll back 30 years now, the current situation. We don't know 30 years from now what universities will look like. So that's the question I want to ask. What should be our international strategy based on that? Yes.
Thank you. I want to answer this question by actually continuing something that I brought up in the first town hall, which is the idea of a global co-op. And by co-op, I'm referring to a program at Northeastern where students are guaranteed this opportunity to work in industry for a semester, and it's almost an expectation that someone will take advantage of it. So to answer this question, I think it's absolutely essential that it becomes an expectation that students will take a semester abroad. I think it's essential that the international component becomes a necessary part of the student's education. So I think that in 20 to 30 years, CMU will be a place where all students can expect coming in that they will have this opportunity. And in order to make that possible, it's very important that we structure curriculums in such a way that students have at least 1 or 2 semesters where they can go abroad and take classes in a different university. Or if funding should be available, that they can go abroad for an internship opportunity in the summer. And I think that we have so many campuses all over the world that we already have a foot in the door. We already have a way to start this process, and that could be expanded.
Just keep the tradition. Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm Kibble. I'm a freshman here at CMU.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Andrew Schwartz. As I look around the room, the people that I recognize are undergraduates, graduates, doctoral students, faculty, staff, administrators. I pretty much recognize all of those categories. I know people in different colleges, different campuses, but I actually don't recognize anyone that I know that isn't from the US. And so having been here for 4 years, as I think about that, the fact that we have such a high percentage of international people here, and I really haven't met most of them, means that there's a lot of people that we bring here, and yet even though 80% of life is supposed to be showing up, our placement has not met engagement. So I think that's pretty consistent. I think you see a lot of people from similar backgrounds interacting with each other. They'll all go to class and they'll all sort of be in their own groups, and you get people that speak different languages in the same class. So I think I'll look back and say that of all of these things we've talked about today, even though I find myself as one of the most involved students, I think this is the only one where I can say CMU did not prepare me in this flight, but they did in every other.
Excellent point, Andrew. Thank you.
I don't have a mic, but my name is Linda Gentile. I think you can hopefully hear me at the front of the room. I would, I guess, expand on that comment and say we are very international in some ways, but I think we don't live up to our potential in not only with our international students, but with our domestic students as well, of learning about different cultures when we have so many opportunities to do so. So I agree with study abroad. You may not be surprised that study abroad is part of my office, but I love that comment. But in addition to study abroad, within our own classrooms and campuses, I think we fail sometimes to reach the potential we have given how many different cultures we have on campus. And it's not just our international students that need to mix broadly, it's our domestic students that we fail sometimes as well in helping them interact more.
On that particular issue, if you have some ideas how to address that issue, we are all ears. Okay.
Well, I want to build on Herr Schwartz's statement. And that is, when we received the National Science Foundation Award of the Year, I asked the people who were in the room, there were about 100, please raise your hand if you're foreign born. 80 of them did. And when you think about the next generation, and the fact that our experience now is that most of those who come from abroad stay here, but now that's changing. Many of our PhD graduates go back to Korea, go back to China, go back to India, go back to many countries. And we have a huge challenge that we don't have enough American PhD students. And we have not reached out to our communities enough to make sure that we have the diversity, and we have not done enough to address global challenges and opportunities. And so I think we have a major strategic opportunity to put what you said together with what was stated before and look at all of these in an interconnected way to address what are the future challenges of the world and how they relate to education, research, development, and the experience on campus.
Thank you very much, Wilco.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Hi. This is Suman. I'm an exchange student.
Identify yourself, please.
My name is Suman. I'm an exchange student. I've been here since past 5 months. I would like to expand more on the comments given by the director of OIE and Andrew. That was pretty much true, because we were gathered once for the first OIE orientation that happens on Thursday, and after that we are nowhere. I mean, there is no frequent meeting of the people who came from different parts of the world. So, and there will be one mail every Friday, greetings from OIE, but people don't pretty much respond to emails that way. But still, if OIE could arrange meetings either bi-weekly or maybe once in a month, that would be a true platform where students from different parts of the world can meet and share their experiences. Even the domestic students can also be invited to the meeting so that they can share. That will be a forum where a wide range of experiences can be shared all around.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really share with the sentiments that Andrew provided as well. I am what many people would consider an Asian American. I was born in China, but I moved here when I was 4 and have been residing in America ever since. And I feel like I myself am very adjusted to American culture and every part of that. But going back to also diversity, I'm a community advisor, and as that process, I have to interview a lot of candidates. And one of the questions that we always ask is, what do you think of diversity? And I've never ever had someone tell me that they feel like diversity is lacking on campus. And they always tell me that, oh, Carnegie Mellon was this really eye-opening experience for me because I had never met a Korean person before I even came to Carnegie Mellon. And yet, when I talk to people about diversity in a deeper context, they can always tell me that they feel like there's no actual integration between our actual cultures, and those conversations are not actually happening. And I've felt almost particularly guilty about this as well, because I feel like even as an Asian American, I am no longer able to connect to international students from my original home country. And I don't think that there's currently a platform or a space to talk about that. And I want to hopefully help create it as well. But I think that it takes more than just having weekly meetings between the international students themselves, or even having domestic students travel to a lot of foreign countries. I think it takes just those conversations on our campus currently between perhaps Asian Americans who have become adjusted to talk to international students, so that this culture from international students to want to just come to CMU as a stepping stone so that they can go back to their countries is not as pervasive as it currently is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last one. Hi, my name is Danny Burlow. In my work when I was in Silicon Valley at San Jose State University, they have an international house. It's a college-owned dorm that students have to apply to, both international and domestic students. And the expectation is that the residents of the international house will not only engage and create programs for themselves around international topics and issues, but also expand that awareness to the campus community. So it's a way for the students, not just on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, but on an ongoing basis to engage in international topics. And they were also given funding by the university to bring in speakers to address some of those questions that we were talking about.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Rick said that I should stop now.
Sorry. So in an effort to finish on time and close out by 6, let me first say thanks for an enormously constructive discussion. I know we covered a lot of ground, and there was we just scratched the surface on a couple of really critical issues. Let me continue to encourage folks to move to the website and email. And there's also a set of meetings that folks should be aware of. As I talked about at the beginning, February 3rd, 12 to 1, there's a town hall meeting open to staff and economy. Also on the 3rd, 4:30 to 6, that's going to be a busy day for me. There's an open town hall for the faculty. And then to drill down on some of these issues and others, we're actually scheduling focus area specific town halls. So imagine taking that 15 minutes, expanding it to 90. We'll do it right here in the Posner Center. Here are the 3 dates: February 11th for transformative experience, the 17th for research, the 18th for teaching and learning. Those are going to be opportunities to go much deeper on a set of kind of preliminary recommendations and discussions. So please let us know if you can make those dates. We will also be sending out some sort of campus-wide communications. In March, we'll have a town hall, date TBD toward the end of the month. And again, there's a huge amount of additional outreach happening at the department level, at multiple campus groups level. If your group or department or set of people would like me or one of the thrust leaders, focus area leaders to come discuss the plan, we're happy to try to set something up. And again, please hit that email hard with additional feedback. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Good job, Rick. Well done.